Welcome to week 4 of the summer series on our greatest hits. This week we're covering soil biota, soil organic matter, and life in the soil in general, and how we knew about all this stuff before it became popular. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. This week we begin with a piece from the Iowa Learning Farms entitled, "It's Alive. Scientists Get Closer to Identifying What Lives in Our Soil." The importance of soil life cannot be overstated. That we know so little about this complex web of life is not surprising. Soil science has focused mostly upon the easily measured properties of soil, its chemistry, pH and that sort of thing, and the physics involved in compaction, ploughing and so forth. This article from Iowa Learning Farms refers to the University of Colorado, Boulder, and their release of a World Soil Atlas. This is basic science and shows how far we have come and yet need to travel. In much the same way, a lot of 19th century biology was about classification and basically listing and describing every living thing. So soil science is at this base level. I might point out that the 19th century biologists didn't eventually end up listing every living thing, but they tried. And from this attempt at classification, which continues today, a few 19th century biologists were heading in a direction which led to Charles Darwin and a little thing we called the theory of evolution. So good things come from classification practices. Back to the soil. Quote, "Researchers at the Cooperative Institute for Research in Environmental Sciences at the University of Colorado, Boulder published their study in the January issue of the respected journal Science, analysing 237 soil samples from 18 countries across 6 continents of varying climates. The researchers discovered that 2% of the soil bacteria, about 500 species, accounted for nearly half of the soil bacterial communities found worldwide." End quote. This is intriguing. Unfortunately, we don't have a similar study from before 1940 and all the changes that have happened in farming since then, so change over time cannot be inferred. Yet 500 species accounting for nearly 50% of worldwide soil bacteria raises some questions. 1. Have we inadvertently selected for these particular species through the application of fertilizers, herbicides and pesticides? 2. Have these bacteria always formed about half of the soil bacteria? 3. Do the communities vary between arable, grazing and forested soil? And 4. How do we work with what we have now? The first 2 questions are rather difficult to answer, obviously, but there may be techniques to discover their answers. I'm thinking coprolite analysis might provide a window into the past structure of bacterial soil communities. Maybe. Question 3 is easily answered by taking samples across the 3 land use types: arable, grazing and forestry. Indeed, it would be possible to toss in other variables such as the systems used on these options. So state forestry sprayed regularly versus wild forest soils, regenerative grazing lands versus set stocking options, and plough and spray versus no-till and spray versus no-till organic production. The answers would be fascinating. And remember, we are only talking about bacteria in the quoted study. There are many other life forms in the soil. All of the above options could be tested for effects, say, on mycelium. Now that's a study I'd be very happy to read. If anyone listening knows of such research covering these areas, I'd love to hear from you. Either email me at podcast@worldorganicnews.com or leave a link on the World Organic News Facebook page. Both links are in the show. Question 4, how do we work with what we have now, is also of great interest. I suspect, given our understanding of what ploughing, set stocking and clear felling of forests does to soil carbon, I'm pretty sure it's safe to say these practices aren't optimal for soil bacteria nor soil biota at large. Still, a vigorous set of tests across various climatic, altitude and latitude variables would be instructive. We can't just guess. We need measurements. I know this is a strange suggestion in this time of feelings over facts, but there you go. I'm old-fashioned that way. Some such research is being planned. Quote, "Cooperative Institute for Research in Environmental Sciences researchers believe this discovery sets up a most wanted list of soil bacteria, as it points to which bacteria could be targeted in future studies seeking to understand soil microbes and their contribution to soil fertility and ecosystem functioning. The next step is to begin categorising these dominant bacteria into groups of co-occurring bacteria and habitat preferences, resulting in data that the series group hopes will shed more light on the function of certain groups of bacteria, eventually leading to agricultural applications, end quote. Now that's not quite where I'd like to see the emphasis, but I have an agenda, clearly not hidden, but an agenda nonetheless. For more on the work of the Cooperative Institute for Research in Environmental Sciences, there's a link in the show notes. We are at an interesting point in our understanding of soil biota, and I'll endeavour to keep all my listeners up to speed on this fascinating field of research. And with that, I'll finish for this week. This has been a JM Podcasting Services production. Link in the show notes.